Warning: the Curious Native podcast contains mature topics and themes that are intended for an older youth and adult audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, welcome to the Curious Native Podcast. I'm your host, Hunas Makatian, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about a famous gay rights activist and liberation activist, and one of the first black trans women to lead an organization in the United States. That's right, we'll be talking about Marsha P. Johnson and her life and legacy as a gay rights activist. So if you're interested, please keep on listening. Marsha P. Johnson was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey on August 24th, 1945. Growing up, Marsha faced a lot of bigotry as she had the desire to wear women's clothing and shoe wear, as as she said in, let's see, this article I was reading. Cannot find. I have so many notes open. Jesus. Anyways, and she did. From the age of 5, she wore dresses and, put on her mother's clothing, but soon she felt pressured by other children's relentless bullying and harassment to, she stopped wearing what she wanted to wear. Which this did end up escalating quite quickly to sexual assault by a 13-year-old boy of all, which, I mean, which isn't surprising considering, unfortunately, queer youth experience mental, physical, and sexual abuse at much higher rates than cisgender and heteronormative children. I can't remember which one it was, but according to a study by UCLA, trans people are over 4 times more likely to experience violent crimes than cisgendered people. So, that's something that's always on my mind when I read about stuff like this, especially about queer activists back in the day. What they experienced growing up. So let's see. She ended up graduating high school from Thomas A. Edison High, and immediately moved to New York City with one bag of clothes and $15 to her name. Once in New York, uh, Marsha P. Johnson returned to dressing in the clothing that that made her feel like her, and adopted the full name Marsha P. Johnson. The P stand for "Pay It No Mind," a phrase that became her motto. Johnson did describe herself, as a lot of different ways, since there wasn't the language that we have today to describe herself the way she would have wanted to describe herself. She would have described herself as a gay person, a drag queen, a self-proclaimed drag queen, and a transvestite, which, she used she, her pronouns, and transgender only became commonly used after her death. I believe in the 90s is when she also died. So, around that time is when transgender really became, the terminology that would be used, which I believe, I could be wrong, but I think it's in the 1999 Psycho remake. Was it 1999? 1998, I believe. Because, in that original one, they used the word transvestite in the 60s version, the original, and I believe in the 98 version, they used the word transgender. Or they don't even use it at all. I can't remember. It's one of the two. According to her nephew, Johnson always maintained a close but fraught relationship with her family back in New Jersey. I guess, had to do with her wanting to live as her, as a woman, because she grew up in a very religious family. She grew up, she attended Mount Timon African Methodist Episcopal Church as a child. and she remained a practicing Christian for the rest of her life. So, she grew up in a very Christian household. So, being a transgendered person wouldn't, I don't think it would have really flew in her household or with her family. So, when you take that into account, I'm guessing that, that might have had something to do with that. But I couldn't find too much about, I get that was a private matter. So, I guess it's just stay private. Um, though she moved to New York to, be her, New York City, it still prosecuted gay people and frequently criminalized their activities and presence. LGBTQ people were limited and sometimes ignored completely, having difficulty finding employment. Johnson turned to sex work. She was often abused by clients and arrested by the police. So, which, when you take into account, she's a prominent figure within the Stonewall movement, and that whole situation. I do have my phone out with all my notes, so I was writing something down. I need to make sure I have everything good because, like I said, I am doing an episode. Did I? I don't know if I mentioned it. If I mentioned it, it might have been in the intro. I do record those at a later time. But I am making an episode on Stonewall and everything. I am having trouble finding more academic papers and maybe newspapers by black academics and black journalists, specifically queer, because I didn't want to, I didn't want to center. I didn't want to censor white queer voices since I've noticed, especially amongst spaces that talk about Stonewall, they seem to, censor and focus on the white queer people. So, you gotta understand, Stonewall was such a significant, it wasn't only until a year later, after Stonewall, was when the first Pride happened, and that was, to honor and commemorate all the people that fought at Stonewall. Which, it is Pride Month right now, so I did want to mention that. I I think this is why, recently there was a news of, people going to the Stonewall Memorial and ripping down the pride flags that are up there. And I just, you have to understand, the raid on Stonewall really, put the gay rights movement in the forefront of, civil rights. The first gay pride parade, yep, like I said, took place literally a year later in 1970, because Stonewall took place in 1969. And a series of gay rights groups, including the Gay Liberation Front, a more radical organization, and the Gay Activist Alliance, a more moderate and focused spin-off group, emerged. Johnson was involved in the early days of both, but grew frustrated by the exclusion of transgender and LGBTQ people of color from the movement. She actively spoke out about the transphobia in the early gay rights movement. In 1970, Johnson and Rivera founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionary STAR, an organization dedicated to sheltering young transgender individuals who were shunned by their families. I am so sorry. which, which I mean, if anybody you are curious as to who Rivera is, Sylvia Rivera was an American gay liberation and transgender rights activist who was a noted community worker in New York City. Rivera, who identified as a drag queen most of her life and later as a transgender person, participated in demonstrations with the Gay Liberation Front. So, they were, they were friends. So maybe I'll somehow talk about an episode with her. But as for now, this is Johnson's episode. So, speaking of Stonewall and, Johnson, Her life really changed when she found herself engaging with the resistance at the Stonewall Inn on June 28th, 1969. In the early morning hours, police raided the bar and began arresting the patrons, most of whom were gay men. Johnson and Rivera arrived at Stonewall around 2 a.m., where Johnson said in a later interview, the place was already on fire, and there was a raid already. The riots had already started. There are many competing stories about what Johnson did on the Stonewall, which one of the ones I hear was she was one of the first people to throw a brick, but I couldn't find any sources that would confirm that, so I'm just gonna go out and say maybe she did, maybe she didn't. All I know is she said she showed up already and it was already chaos, so something tells me she probably didn't. But it's still, this was still a significant moment, regardless if she was one who threw the first brick or somebody else did. I don't think it really matters. What matters is this happened and it ended up leading to, Pride, which is something that still happens today and is an important, it's Pride Month right now. It's very important. It's very important to, gay rights history and specifically LGBTQ plus history, especially amongst, queer black people and queer indigenous people. So, um, let's see, where did I leave off? Johnson, like many other transgender women, felt they had nothing to lose. They were not only angered by the police raid, but also the oppression and fear they experienced every day. In the wake of the raid, Johnson and Rivera led a series of protests, which I ended up talking about, that ended up leading to the first parade, the first gay pride parade that took place in 1970, and the series of gay right groups, including the Gay Liberation Front. You know, the Stonewall led to so many significant things for not only Rivera but for Johnson as well. Throughout the 1970s, Johnson became a more visible and prominent member of the gay rights movement. She began performing with the drag group Hot Peaches. She attracted the attention of many, including the pop artist Andy Warhol, who included her in a series of prints in 1975 entitled Ladies and Gentlemen. In an interview Johnson did for a 1972 book, she said her ambition was to see gay people liberated and free to have equal rights and that other people have in America. She wanted to see her gay brothers and sisters out of jail and on the streets again. And in another interview, she said, as long as gay people don't have their rights all across America, there is no reason for gay liberation. And in 1980, she was invited to ride in the lead car of the Gay Pride Parade in New York City. So, you know, she was such a prominent figure in the gay rights movement, and not only that, but for the trans movement, because she spoke so much on, bigotry that trans people faced from gay people, especially in the gay movement and the gay civil rights era, which coincided with just the civil rights era in general, like the 60s, 70s, and the 50s. It's just it's really sad that she fought so hard for the gay rights movement, and I see so many gay people just completely just like throw everything she did, just like throw it to the side and act like it just doesn't matter when in reality I just feel like I'm just feeling a little salty because of the LGB movement and the way they've been moving strides, which I would like to say proudly that I've been blocked by two of the LGBT alliances, different accounts. I think one that was from the UK and then one that's from here in the United States. I believe in Alabama that it's quote unquote based in. So I don't know. It's like there wouldn't be a gay rights movement without trans people. So What's the point of the hate? I Let me see if I could find this article I have in my notes, because it was, I just, here it is. Victory Institute, which I know they aren't the best, but it's a look at transphobia within the LGBTQ community. Um, let's see. Attitudes towards transgender folks from both queer and cishet people are often reflected in the lack of transgender elected officials. According to the Out for American report that Victory Institute published in June, an LGBTQ elected official in the U.S. today is most likely to be a white gay male. Almost 80% of out officials are white, 57% are gay, and 59% are male. Transgender men and women are thus severely underrepresented, with trans women in a state legislature, Danica Rome, and 8 more in local positions, totaling 1.6% of all LGBTQ elected officials. Additionally, Rome and other in this count, such as Minneapolis, I freaking cannot speak or read, city council members Andrea Jenkins and Philip Cunningham were elected just last year. In 1969, the year of the Stonewall Uprising, hardly anyone knew or identified with the term transgender. However, individuals who would come to identify as trans were already living their lives as their authentic selves, such as Christine Jorgensen, who became famous in the early 1950s for her reassignment surgery. Gay liberation activists such as Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera referred to themselves as gay, among a variety of other terms, including um, transvestites and drag queens, indicating a fluidity and lack of focus on labels. But the reason why I wanted to read that was just to show, how important it is that, trans people, have, you know, if it's not going to be in the government, at least have, leadership positions and roles in big organizations that could, help, fight the good fight, especially, like I mentioned in the intro. If I mentioned it, hopefully I mentioned it because it was something that was supposed to be mentioned. Let me see where my notes go because I had it written down. She was one of the first black trans women to lead an organization in the United States. And, that's important. It makes a much more focus on them, and it makes a bigger focus on, the fight and the cause. So, if you hear the fan on, it's because it's, like, really freaking hot here. And I'm dying, and it's just so hot. The organization that she created advocated for the sexual liberation of all people too. May I just add, the group was immediately formed after the Stonewall riots, like I mentioned earlier, with its first act being to maintain the momentum of the uprising. I think I've been like, I'm trying to like prolong this as long as I can because I just her death is like really sad. There was the circumstances surrounding Johnson's death. It's just her body was found in the Hudson River 6 days after she was reported missing. Police ruled it a suicide, but friends and families disagree. Police were slow to investigate as well. Johnson's death, you know, but in 2012 the case was reopened. Thankfully, Netflix's upcoming there was a documentary on this. I don't know. I didn't really want to sit here and talk about her death. I would rather talk about, her accomplishments while she was alive and what she did, who she was and the fact that she fought for, not only, gay people but trans people as well because, the bigotry that trans people faced back then was crazy. If I could find the clip, I'll put it in there.
Hi, baby. Y'all better quiet down. Nothing. I've been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail. They write me every motherfucking week and ask for your help. And you all don't do a goddamn thing for them. Have you ever been beaten up and raped in jail? Now think about it. They've been beaten up and raped after they haven't spent much of their money in jail to get their cell phones and try to get their sex change. The women have tried to fight for their sex changes or to become women of the women's liberation. And they write STAR, not the women's group. They do not write women. They do not write men. They write STAR because we're trying to do something for them. I have been to jail. I have been raped and beaten many times by men, heterosexual men that do not belong in the homosexual shelter. But do you do anything for them? No. You all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I will not longer put up with this shit. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all? Think about that. I do not believe in a revolution, but you all do. I believe in the gay power. I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights. That's all I wanted to say to your people. If you all want to know about the people that are in jail, and do not forget Bambi Lamore and Dora Marks, Kenny Messner, and other gay people that are in jail, come and see the people at Star House on 12th Street, on 640 East 12th Street, between B and C, apartment 14. The people that are trying to do something for all of us, and not men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me the G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an E! Give me an R! Gay power! Louder gay power!
So the trans woman in the video that was calling out the transphobia at this gay rights rally is Sylvia Rivera, and this was let me see, I can't find the march where this was at, but it did happen in 1973. So, you know, Marsha P. Johnson and Rivera, they've been calling out transphobia, especially in the gay rights movement, for, you know, as long as, you know, they fought in the movement. So, I don't know. Especially this month, especially with, like, you know, the LGB, you know, trying to push out the TQ, which I've made multiple posts about, calling out how dumb it is considering the gay, lesbian, and bisexual people all fall under the queer umbrella, since the queer is an umbrella term that, encompasses many identities, both, both gender and sexual and romantic identities. So, I'm gonna leave this off on a good note, and I'm gonna say go ahead and read up on Marsha P. Johnson yourself, and go learn about everything that she fought for, and go read up on about Rivera, because she's also she's absolutely badass. She was there at Stonewall, and she was a good friend of Marsha P. Johnson. I am gonna do a sequel in this episode, like this just confirmed. I'm just gonna do a sequel about Marsha P. Johnson. I'll probably talk about her more also in my Stonewall episode, which should be out soon, maybe the next couple of weeks. I have to find time to record because I've been very busy, I have a lot of things going on. I have a guest episodes coming up soon. I hope I have an interview coming up that I want to do. Hopefully, we could, lock down a time in the next couple of weeks. I already have a confirmed time to record my white veganism episode, which should be out soon. I didn't have Wi-Fi for a minute, so there was that. Anyways, with all that being said, please go ahead and like, subscribe, and share, and leave any, I take constructive criticism very well. So if you have anything that that you feel any ideas, or anything that can help improve my podcast, I will take it all. Please go ahead and follow the podcast official Twitter page at TCN Pod, capital TCN, lowercase, no wait, capital TCN P, lowercase OD, yes. And go ahead and follow my main Twitter page at Huskas lowercase HUSKA, uppercase S, lowercase MINI, uppercase T, lowercase HINE. And with all that being said, thank you so much for listening. I'm Hunas Makathian, and this has been the Curious Native Podcast.
Hey, what do you say? Pass the bill or you'll pay.
Why are you here today?
Darling, I want my gay rights now. I think it's about time the gay brothers and sisters got their rights. And especially the women.
How will this affect you and your job?
Darling, I don't have a job. I'm on welfare. I have no intention of getting a job as long as this country discriminates against homosexuals. There's only homosexuals, bisexuals, and trisexuals, darling. And there's no straight people. Because it is trying out women, honey.
Thank you very much for talking to us.